Rev up your engines!
All right, here we go. Politicians in Washington, D.C. messing with our cars. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. In their stupid bill now, they made a law that new cars are going to all have kill switches in them. They want to have kill switches installed that authorities can turn off whenever they want on new model cars. Thank goodness it might be 5 years before they actually put this into effect, so maybe it won't occur. But the very fact that they're thinking about it shows that these politicians don't know their rear ends from a hole in the ground. Politicians involved in things, it becomes absurd, as it did in New Zealand, where in September a car was pulled over and they opened the trunk and it was full of Kentucky Fried Chicken meals, and they arrested the people for delivering food to people when you're supposed to quarantine. Auckland, New Zealand, was in lockdown and you're not supposed to go anywhere. These Uber people were delivering the chicken to them and they got arrested. The bill in the United States from putting these kill switch must, and I quote, passively monitor the performance of a driver of a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether the driver is impaired. So they'll be monitoring and they'll have the ability to turn the car off, or the car will have the ability to turn itself off. Like, you can't see any problems with this one. Well, of course, politicians, they sign bills. They probably don't even read the things. This thing, all the pages, I'm sure the guy didn't read any of the stuff, Maybe the first page and the last, if that. The kill switch, not only is the kill switch in your car, but it has open access. So the police or the government could turn your car off. And as we all know, the hackers would have loved to be turning cars off and laughing their heads off. Now, they didn't even debate this in Congress. They just stuck it on the end of a bill and threw it in. All the obvious ramifications of loss of privacy, and gee, what if they turn it off at the wrong time? I mean, these people are idiots because these security systems that you can buy, they can't turn the car off while you're driving it because it could cause a wreck. It can make it so it doesn't start once it gets somewhere. So if somebody stole your car, you find out they stole it, or turn it off so they can't restart it. But if they're driving down the road, you can't turn it off. These people don't think of the ramifications of anything. They just pass these bills willy. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. We'll see what happens when we actually put it into law. All I got to say is, thank goodness this may not take into effect for 5 years, if ever. So let's hope people get mad about it and say, that's a stupid idea. Let's not implement that one. Now, here's something that really gets my goat. It's bad enough if you want to get a high-end Ford Explorer these days that it's $55,750 for a high-end one. But that price is just a total lie because it doesn't include the destination charges of $1,245, and you can't get out of not paying it. When on earth did these clowns allow them to advertise a price when you can't buy it at that price? It does not include destination. It's like, well, you go buy a fridge and it'll say, well, you buy the fridge, but it's another $200 destination charges. No, it's nonsense. You go to the store, the price is the price. They don't, there's $1,245 destination fee. We had to get the vehicle here. Well, all the other stuff you buy had to get from where it was made to where you bought it. You don't have to pay a destination charge for that. Amazon ships stuff free if you remember Amazon Prime. I mean, when does this nonsense get allowed that they can advertise the price of a vehicle, but nobody can buy it at that price because it doesn't include the $1,245 destination charge? It's gotten to a point of absurdity with these manufacturers that they can outright lie. When did we have to pay for that extra? Sure, we were paying it before, but it used to be in the price of the car. Now it's, well, we'll hide that on the side so nobody will know. Yeah, well, you're going to get the bill, right? Total nonsense that they're even allowed to advertise that price here in the United States. If you can't buy it at that price, it should not be able to advertise at that price. It should have it. And then they got a little asterisk that says includes $1,245 destination charge. Not, we had that on later. What a bunch of nonsense. Raider says, I got 03 Chevy Impala, 3.8. It's losing power. When I reach 40 to 50 miles per hour, it sputters. I changed those spark plugs, but I couldn't get the last 2 spark plugs. Get all the spark plugs. You don't want to have 4 good ones and 2 bad ones. It's hard to get those other 2, yes, but you got to change them and make sure they're all the same exact spark plug with the same gap. Start there. That could easily fix the whole thing. But if it doesn't, the first thing you should do after that would be change the fuel filter. The fuel filter filters your fuel. If it's clogged up, it restricts the flow, and your car might go perfectly fine until you get to 40 or 50 miles an hour, and then it starts sputtering because it's not getting enough fuel. Now, first change the filter. That could fix it, right? If not, it could be a weak fuel pump that isn't pumping enough fuel. That can be pressure tested. Only, and heed my warning here, you gotta change the filter first. Because if you pressure test the pump with an old clogged filter, it might say, oh, the pressure's low. Then you buy a super expensive in-tank gas pump, take the gas tank off, change it all, only to find out the only thing really wrong was a clogged fuel filter. So always change the fuel filter first, then change it. Now, if it's not that, you could pressure test the catalytic converter. Take out the oxygen sensor, have a mechanic do it, pressure test it. If it's got too much back pressure before the cat's clogged, then it needs replacing. That can do it too. Those are really the most common things. Nathan says, I got a 2007 Honda Accord 2.4. It burns oil. What can I do? All right, of course, like I always say, change the PCV valve. Stuck open and it sucks the air-oil mixture, and the PCV valve is supposed to allow you to suck in the crankcase vapors, but not pure oil. And if it's stuck open, oil will flow in it too. Start there. Now, if it still does, the only thing you can really do is try to clean the engine. It could be the piston rings are carbon fouled and they're not sealing right, and then it'll burn some oil. Bernie and his friends at ATS in Albuquerque, New Mexico have this great cleaner. They make one for the fuel system and one for the oil. The oil one is what you would use. You'd put it in the engine oil, then you let it sit for about 15-20 minutes, idling it like 2,000 RPM, sit there, put music on or something. Then you change the oil and filter, and if there's carboned up rings, it can clean the carbon off. It's amazing stuff. Then you change the oil filter, and if that fixes it, you can thank Scotty and Bernie for inventing the stuff to make it not burn any oil anymore. Modern cars have low tension piston rings. When I was young, they had high tension rings. They sealed better, so they could go hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles without burning oil. But they get worse gas mileage because they're high tension, there's more friction. So to get better gas mileage, they put lower tension ones on that get better gas mileage. But if the oil is dirty and carbon builds up, they don't have enough tension to seal right, and then the carbon lets the oil go through and it burns some of the oil. So try Bernie Cleaner. If that fixes it, boy, you'll be real happy. For a little bottle of something that's $20-25, you can save having to rebuild your engine. It's good stuff. And if that does work, change your oil more often because it's dirty oil that builds the carbon up. My young girl too says, how do I replace a 99 Infiniti QX4 oil pump? Pay a mechanic, that's how. That is a job that most mechanics are going to charge $1,400 labor. It takes almost 10 hours for a professional mechanic to take the engine all apart because of the design on that car. That's why I warn people about buying Infinitis. They're fun to drive. They're zippy, right? But when they break, they're the high-end Nissans. It's owned by Nissan. Those are the expensive ones. They have all the high tech. They're much more expensive to repair. The way that's designed, you got to take all kinds of stuff. It's not like an old 350 Chevy where all you had to do was drop the oil pan, bolt the pump off, bolt another pump, it seals, and away you went. No, you got to take the whole engine apart. Most people don't want to spend that kind of money. And it's a 99. Let's say, I don't know how many miles you got. You didn't say. If it's high mileage, why would you take the engine apart and just replace the oil pump? You'd want to rebuild the engine, piston rings, bearings, all that stuff. And then it gets even more expensive. So it is a insane job. Now, if you got low oil pressure, before you go changing that pump, flush the system out with a good flush, then change the oil and filter. And if you find out that it works better, it just meant that you had a dirty engine, it was clogged up, and that made the oil pressure get low. That often doesn't. Taylor says, should I use Lucas stop slip or not use? I got an '09 Kia Spectra, 212,000 miles. In the winter, it shifts rough when it's driven. But when it's warming up, it's okay. Could I add the Lucas stop slip, or would it make it worse? I would not. One, you're at the end of the lifespan of it anyway. It's an automatic transmission. It uses thin fluid. You put that thick Lucas stop slip, it may actually make it worse because it's thicker. When it's cold, it's going to shift even worse because it's cold. Back in the day, you go back in the 70s, 80s, mid-90s, American automatic transmissions are completely different than the one your Kia has. And that Lucas stop slip was pretty good for them. They're completely different designs. You put it in, and I saw GM cars from the 80s and 90s that slipped like mad, and they put a bottle or two of that stuff in, they stopped slipping for a while. Hey, it was amazing stuff. But in a modern car like that Kia, no. Don't waste your money. Don't throw it in. It'll probably make it worse when it's cold because it's super thick, and that's a thin fluid. Yours is just flat starting to wear out. Personally, just leave it alone and drive. You said once it warms up, it goes good. You got 212,000 miles. You got your money's worth. Just baby it now and warm it up. Like, let's say if you got a place you can put it in the heated garage, leave it in the heated garage. It'll be a lot warmer than out in the snow and ice. Then it won't take as long to warm up either. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.